Hello everyone, and we would like to welcome you to our breeding webinar in conjunction with the Teagasc Tirlán Joint Future Farm Programme. So over the coming week, there's a series of farm walks happening as part of the Teagasc Breeding Week, and as part of that, John Ryan from Gertnahu in County Tipperary, who is one of the Teagasc Tirlán Joint Programme Future Farm Programme participants, is hosting a farm walk on his farm as part of the Breeding Week. So today I'm joined online by Sandra Hayes from Teagasc. Sandra is the coordinator for the joint programme, and I'm also joined by Niall Duffy, who is the Dairy Genomics Manager from Duvet. So thanks to Sandra and Niall for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your presentations over the next 30 minutes. So I suppose calving season is coming close to an end on most farms, and at this stage we're probably starting to think of the breeding season over the next few weeks, which will happen probably in about 4 weeks' time. I suppose weather conditions haven't been ideal to date from a spring perspective, but hopefully that will start to change over the coming days and weeks. So looking ahead to the breeding season, it's a vital time in the farming calendar and an area that requires significant planning to ensure a successful outcome for calving 2025. So as part of this webinar, we hope to leave you with some key information and tips for what we hope will be a successful breeding season in 2024. So without further ado, I'm going to hand across to Sandra. Sandra is going to present to you over the next 10 minutes around nutrition for breeding. And as part of that presentation, Sandra, you might just introduce yourself as part of the joint programme. And following Sandra's presentation, Niall is going to give us a presentation. So Sandra, I'll hand over to you there if you're ready to present.
Lovely. Thank you very much, TJ, and thank you for having us on this webinar here today. I'll share my slides there now so everyone can see.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm covering here today is kind of a core pillar stone for the breeding season, and that's nutrition. Okay, and it's something that we can kind of forget, coming into the breeding season. And I know this spring has been particularly tricky with all the rain that we've been having, trying to get cows out to grass. But I suppose today's webinar is to kind of push, to keep that to the core of the mind, for the breeding season. So we'll start off, and I suppose one of the main things there is to manage body condition score. And with cows being back in on sheds quite a lot on silage, it's actually a time where you can, go in behind them once they start feeding on the silage and actually have a look at them, or run them through the crush, and I suppose mark the cows that are particularly low in body condition score. Anything below 2.75, 2.5, you really need to mark those cows and kind of have a look at those. Now, some farmers have a great setup that they they start this body condition scoring in the dry period, and they're kind of ahead of the posse on when to be looking for these changes. But a cow can lose a considerable amount of body condition after they calve, and if they're not getting adequate nutrition, this can substantiate into a greater loss. So they need to be on a rising plane of nutrition at all times. Now, the easy thing that we have found, looking at different herds throughout the spring this year, is that when cows get out to grass, that's made it an awful lot easier. So yes, I totally understand that, ground is particularly wet. I'm walking farms every day. I'm seeing that, and I'm seeing the trials and tribulations that farmers are getting to. But if and when conditions do arise that it is, okay to go out and graze, do get out and try them to get, as I said there, to graze well, but not too well. We don't want, grass to be grazed out below the 4 centimeters, because it's that's not, that's too tight. That's golf ball grazing, and we don't need cows to do that. If they graze down, to, I would say 4, 5, 6 centimeters, whatever is left behind will be got in the second round. We're looking at a high energy diet. So if there's any farmers that have got grazing done in the springtime and they're looking, during the breeding season, they'll be starting into the second round. The covers that they'll be on will be between 1,500 kgs of dry matter per hectare, and that's the 2.5 to 3 leaf stage. And as I just say, if you can, a man's fist is usually the 500. So if you get 3 fists of grass for your cows, they're eating top quality grass at that stage. Limited need for protein, it's in the grass. Grass at that stage will be 23% crude protein, so there's plenty of protein in the grass. And if it's at the 1500 kg dry matter stage, it's got plenty of energy. So that is the solution for our high energy diet. So look, as I say, conditions aren't great at the moment and grazing is limited, but the breeding season for a lot of people is a month away. So the month of April could be totally changed. So keep that good quality grass in mind. For late calvers, they do need TLC. And one of the things I would definitely be saying is once a day. And some of our future farmers have been doing that already. They've put bands on or tape on the tail of the cows to mark the ones they're brought into the parlour twice a day. They get fed meal twice a day, but they only get fed once a day. And some of them have seen a turnaround in as small as 3 to 4 weeks in getting those. They have shown heats and they've seen those, they've recorded the heats, but they've continued to put them on once a day until they get to adequate body condition score. We also want to breed for more robust cows, so you're looking at your EBIs. So the EBI reports that you get from your ICBF need to be looked at those. For maiden heifers, did your in-calf heifers calve on target? So look back at the data that you had, your different charts, like did they calve when you wanted them to calve? And ensure maiden heifers hit the targets for breeding. So depending on the maintenance figure that you have for your herd and for your heifers, there'll be different targets for breeding, which I can go into more detail later on. Also, another key parameter is mineral nutrition. Okay, so know what's limiting on your farm. And one of these things at the moment is going back to our silage. So as I said, we know a lot of the herds are back in on silage at the moment. If you didn't test your silage at that point, right, it would be a very good thing to do now. Particularly you're in probably well into your silage bit, maybe towards the back of the pit, which wasn't sampled. So if you take a sample off the front of the pit in a W shape, send that off and get the mineral analysis on that and the energy and the protein, and it'll let you know if there's any deficiencies there, particularly if silage is the bulk feed at the moment for the herd. For heifers on grass only, it can be deficient for trace minerals. So it might be important that if they're being subsidised with meal, that they would have maybe a heifer booster nut with those that will cover all those trace elements that may not be in the grass. Particularly in the month of April, towards into May, we would see that when grass grows at incredible growth rates, from 75 up to 100, we would find that a lot of the grass would be deficient in trace minerals because the grass is growing so fast. So it's very important maybe to have the minerals delivered in the water, maybe a dosatron for before the pre-breeding season and during the breeding season itself. So here we have, as I say, a chart down here on the bottom of the right-hand side of the slide. Okay, so you can see 2.5, 2.75 and 3 of a body condition score. You're going to have low milk yield and they're going to be anestrous, which means they're not going to show signs of heat. The optimum there is from 3 up to 3.5. So that's the optimal body condition score. That's at calving. And then when you go further, if the animals are too fat, right, 3.5 up to 4.5, there's milk fever and ketosis. And that's the same for breeding. You don't want, the key line that I would say here for nutrition breeding, you want your cows fit, but you don't want your cows fat. That's very, very important. So the second slide that I have here is fit for service. So these are kind of other things that need to be considered. And I have a picture of the little white herd book that every farmer has when they're during the calving season. And I know for many, including most of our future farmers, this is kind of like a Bible. So when a cow might have a difficult calving, might have retained, cleanings, might have had twins, might have need to be put on once a day, after calving, or lost a considerable amount of body condition score. A lot of farmers would write notes in on this booklet. And this is the time when you're getting ready for the breeding season to look back, because some people had started calving from, mid-January, 1st of February. And with all the work that the farmer has been doing, he could forget, the importance of the notes that he has in those. So, cow could have had milk fever, ketosis, displaced abomasum, tetany. So there'll be notes on those. So, have a look at those and see, is there other parameters with those sort of cows? Do I want to be, putting a replacement heifer, possibly straw, into those cows, and do I want to breed them? Did they have milk fever last year as well? Did they have milk fever the year before? Did they have displaced abomasum? So the records that you have on the health of your cows are going to be key in, in making decisions whether to breed from those cows and whether they'll actually return to cycle for this breeding season. As the other issues could be retained placenta, a discharge, and I know that some farmers would actually, score a kind of 2 months after calving. They would have a look and see if there's any discharge on with their cows, and rank them according to those. And I suppose with all these sort of issues, if you're in any doubt, particularly after doing pre-breeding checks and cows that had these issues are not showing signs of cycling, they should be marked off and, get veterinary assistance in, and they might need to be looked at before the breeding season. Late calvings is another one. It is kind of difficult with these to pull them back. If a cow is calved, the end of March, beginning of April, it's hard to pull them back in. And sometimes after late, at this stage, with everybody being very busy on the farm, it's very hard to cop, heats, or whether they've even had a silent heat. So they're ones to watch as well. Mastitis, had you used the California milk test? Had you to treat them? Was there antibiotics delivered on these sort of cows? And lameness. One of the things I remember the vet there in Tirlán, Yara Summers, pointing out to me that, lameness can be a very large contributor to a cow not actually cycling. And these ones can show a body condition loss as well. So number one, with the lameness, they're not actually, producing as much milk as they have done before. But they're also, they won't return to cycling form for you either. So they're ones to watch. And I suppose nota bene, the Latin here, records are really a must for, looking over. And, this is something that we go through with some of the future farmers as well. Use these, you've gone to the bother of noting these, use them for the records for the breeding season. And the last section here, the importance of the submission rate. Okay, so the higher the submission rate, the higher the conception rate. And, I suppose farmers on this need to know, what at the start date of breeding, what are the number of cows that you're submitting? So if you've got a herd with 100 cows in it, how many cows are you submitting? Like if there's late calving in it, that's going to bring down your submission rate, and that's going to bring down your conception rate. And a statistic here from the ICBF, 19% of spring calvers calve from April to June. And their chances of survival into the next breeding season is, particularly if you're going to have a compact calving, 19% of them, their chances of survival are very, very slim. And one thing I've seen over the years is one of the key components to getting the optimum amount of milk solids that you can for your cows is one of the components is your 6-week calving rate. So they're kind of an intrinsic. If you have a high 6-week calving rate, it lends on to having a high submission and conception rate. The reason being is the higher amount of cows calved before you start breeding, whether it be the middle of April or the 1st of May, they have actually gone through 2 cycles, 2 heats. So they're much, much more easier to cop for their submission rate, to inseminate them, and therefore you have a higher conception rate. So synchronization, some people work that for, maybe late calving cows or for their heifers, and that can contribute towards 100% submission rate. So it might be a component that you might need to discuss with your vet, and it increased the number of opportunities then to survive. And as I say, key message I have here from the slide is investigate problem cows early to maximize your in-calf rates and reduce late calving cows. So I'd like to hand back to yourself, TJ, at this stage. Stop sharing. There you go.
Thanks very much, Sandra. Look, a very detailed presentation and very hard to fit everything you want to fit in 10 minutes. But look, I think it's very, very, very timely, I suppose, in relation to, current weather conditions that we're experiencing, and I suppose around nutrition, very important coming up to the breeding season. So look, we might just head into Niall's presentation. We have questions and answers. So Sandra, you're not off the hook yet. We will come back to you for questions and answers. But so look, I mentioned Niall Duffy. Niall is from Devey. He's the genomics manager, dairy genomics manager with Devey, and Niall is going to discuss with us around female and bull selection over the breeding season. So now you might present your slides there and work away.
Yeah. Now can you see them, TJ?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thanks very much for having us on today. Now, so yeah, going to touch a little bit on female selection, a bit of detail around that, and then on bull selection, and finally just matching them up. So, yeah, it's similar stuff which we will be covering tomorrow on John Ryan's farm. So it's the same principles apply, I think, really. So, if we're to start off on the female selection, I think it's always a good question, especially it's probably more as important now as it ever was, as farmers are using more sex semen and they're asking the question, where do I put this sex semen, and how do I improve the genetics of my herd? So I suppose if you're looking at your heifer group to start, all you can really go on your heifer group is the genetic information, maybe the genomic information if the herd was genotyped. And a lot of farmers are probably using sexed on a heifer group, which means nearly half of the replacements down the line are coming from their heifer group and maybe the other half from the cows. So that's something as well. But if we're to look at the cows, I think it's always a good place to start before the heifers, because it gives you I suppose you might get to know the mothers of the heifers and things like that. So here's just a little thing, I suppose. The main aim of this here is to find, your best breeding cows, the cows that suit your farm the most. And I suppose, how do you do that? There's a couple of things. You'd be looking at the production profile of them, the system suitability, like how does this cow's production profile fit into the farm now, going down the line with banding and with all the other things that you want to achieve with your farm, with long walks, etc. And the other thing then to consider is the size and maybe the conformation of the cow. Is this cow suitable for me? Would I like a heifer off her, and is she going to be and these are, you can just simply use beef, or else if you like the cow, use dairy. I think an important thing is around this time of year is when the work has to be done. Sit down for a couple of evenings. You can go on last year's milk recordings, or else you can do your current milk recording. And I suppose it's important to, when you're trying to identify cows within each lactation group, you need accurate milk recordings, because a lot of times you look at a milk recording and there's a huge difference between the milk recording figures and the actual co-op supply figures. And I think if you could just get another couple of milk recordings completed, you can reduce the difference there. But if you were to start off there just on female selection, to try and give farmers some parameters to check, I would say the first thing is, and Sandra mentioned it, would be a healthy, fertile cow, a cow that gives you no problems, in relation to cell count, in relation to mastitis incidence, lameness, fertility, all these things here. And I think that's the starting point. The second thing I'd be looking at, and this is within all lactation groups, first, second, third, the full way up, would be, I think you need your cow that you're submitting to be above your average protein. And by doing that alone, you're probably reducing your number by around half. You know what I mean? That's a great start. If you can get that protein, if you can select the cows above the average protein, it's always good. Now, after that, you're looking at the group of heifers that are coming into the parlour for the first time this year. So it's difficult enough if they've only one recording done, you are really, it's not that accurate of data. So you mainly just would have a look at the first recording and see is there any very low or any high. So you'd avoid breeding the very low ones. For the first lactation group, so they're now in their second lactation, let's call them, you'd be looking for them to have completed around, and this will depend on each herd, and you'd see some herds would have a huge development between first and second, and other herds don't have that much. But in general, your first lactation group, a good heifer should be achieving just below 15% of your herd average. So if you were doing, around 500, she should be doing 420, you know what I mean? So, and above your average protein. So that'd be just above your average protein and around 400 kilo solids. And look at this, could be a little bit different from herd to herd. Second lactation, they should be doing really about your average kilo milk solids, so you around 500 kilo milk solids and above your average protein. Third lactation should be doing above your herd kilo milk solids, so you're talking around 600 kilos there. And after that, then you're going to put a beef straw on the cows really that probably haven't got that have low protein and below the average kilo solids for each group. And I think that's just a little tool that you can go through and do that. When it comes to the sex semen, then I suppose the first step is to calculate the number of heifers that you need next year. And from that, then the number of straws required. As Sandra mentioned, I think you should only really be using it on cows calved before the 1st of March. And I have it written down to see at least one heat, and Sandra mentioned you could see 2 heats. That'd be great. Nutrition is important, of course, for cows and heifers, and if there's a sudden change or deterioration in the diet, that these things can all affect it. So another thing, I think small thin heifers should be given a bit of extra time and maybe not included in the first 3 weeks, maybe because, as you know, small heifers calving in underweight, they're really no good to anybody, and there's a huge risk that they could fall out of the system when they're calving. And I suppose the one last thing I think is important for farmers when they maybe are using more sexed is to monitor the heats in the first, your repeats, monitor them really well, and every couple of days see what proportion are repeating here, and like if it's looking like there's 50% or something coming back, maybe you need to go in with some more conventional there in that case, to get your cows and calf and to make sure you've got enough heifers. So I'll just move on to the next slide. There we go. So sire selection, then look at once you've got your cows selected, I would, you have to then move on to your sires. And I suppose the first place to start is, if you have access to your EBI report, would be to really identify where you'd like to improve the herd in the future. And the first place to start is where you are now. So you can look at your indexes on your herd, which is a good indication, or you can also look at your herd's production. So in this case, just as a farm, we can see that the EBI is high at 250. The milk sub index is quite high at 76. But if you look at the detail here around the milk kg and the components, we can see that there's some room here on I suppose the components and the milk kgs, so there's no real fault in this herd. So I suppose that's just an indication. If you look as well at the performance of the herd, 3.76, 4.52, and the milk kilos under 6,000. So a lot of farmers know exactly themselves where they need to improve, and in this case it's probably a bit of milk, but overall quite good. So when you're looking at bull teams for this herd, I think 30 kilos of milk solids across the team is probably a given at this stage, with an average of 0.2 protein and 0.3 fat. As well as that, I suppose a bit of you need to watch the lines that the bulls are from. Make sure you're not relying too much on the one grand sire if you're using genomic bulls or that kind of thing. It's a way of making sure that you can use future bulls down the line, and you're not risking if something didn't work out in a bull, you haven't got that many of that line in your herd. I think as well is an important aspect of the whole selecting sires is to take a look at the production or the type of cow that the bull is from. This is a good indication of what you could expect in your herd. And of course, then when you've picked your bull team, it's important to use the ICBF inbreeding sire advice. And many farmers are familiar with this. It'll give you the option of 3 sires, and as you can use any of those 3 sires, and I suppose this is where we could maybe put a bit of work in, and see what sires is going to match up the best to the cow. So I really think the dairy cow report, which farmers can download, is one of the best tools to use when trying to mate a cow or a bull to a cow. It gives you everything you need. It gives you, we can see her EBI, of course, but it also gives you the milk production profile from a heifer to the age she is now. And like I suppose when you're matching a bull to a cow, or when the ICBF sire advice is matching to the cow, it would firstly match the milk subindex. But the thing about the milk subindex is you can have the same milk subindex with a different production profile. So I think the first thing is you have your cow picked, you run your sire advice, and you literally highlight one of the bulls that you think is going to match based on her production profile. So we can see here, like maybe she needs a bit more milk, and you know that's also indicated on the EBI. So you'd pick the bull from the three that is the most milk. As well as that, there's other traits that we can consider, like you know, a cow, if she's standing there, you could consider her health, her cell count there. You can look at her as you know, as Sandra mentioned, lameness and is a huge thing that we want to avoid. So if you think that there is a locomotion issue, only slight, with a cow, then maybe you could try and correct that and use a bull that is positive in the feet and legs. Same thing with the udder conformation. If you think this is a cow that isn't that might not hold this udder for a lengthy period and make it into an old cow, but you like the cow otherwise, you know, use a bull that is positive on the udders to try and correct this within your team. Teeth length, and as well robustness, which is very important for the future of for the dairy herd and the beef herd. The two are compatible. If we want robust cows with a bit of strength, you know, we can use bulls that are positive for chest and rump, or positive for body condition score as well. So there's lots of ways. There's lots of different ways you can match the bulls to the cows, and a lot of traits there that can be used within the EBI system. And you know, you're giving the cow the best chance to breed another calf that's a little bit better even. And that's yeah. So that's just an example of the bull team that we use there. All available there in sexed and conventional, and you know, with 30 kilos of solid. So you know, you're keeping your focus on where you want to improve. And I think just the last message is, yeah, the last message I'd have is just on the conventional and in relation to older cows, and that, you know, older cows still have, you know, you could use a bit of conventional on them if you thought that they had real good breeding potential. You know, use a conventional straw if you didn't think that the sex would hold, to try and get a heifer off that good cow, you know. So I'm going to pass you back to TJ. That's all from me. And thanks very much for listening, and hopefully see a good crowd tomorrow with John Ryan's at 11 o'clock. All right.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, lovely. Thanks very much, Niall. Again, good detailed presentation. Again, we could spend a lot more time on it, but unfortunately we don't have that time. So look, I suppose we're heading close to the 30 minutes there, which we'd hope to wrap it up. So a couple of questions there for Sandra and Niall. So Sandra, I suppose as part of the Future Farm program, you know, you're working with the 11 farmers, and I know myself at first hand, you know, a lot of planning goes into the breeding season, and maybe you might just briefly discuss some of the areas that the guys, and when you start planning and what you use to plan for the breeding season. Just very briefly, you might just give us a quick overview.
Okay, so some of this planning actually occurs back in December. Once something that Niall mentioned there, once all the milk recordings are finished, what will actually happen is the farmers will sit down and look at their lifetime milk recording report on the ICBF, which gives them all of the data from their milk recordings that year plus previous years as well. So it gives a great history, and there is tools on that report that the farmers can, you know, select at that point what cows are going to pick sex semen off. So a lot of work on the sex semen is usually done from that milk recording report. They're picking, like what Niall was outlining there, there's different parameters that they'll pick for the different lactation cows, and they'll put that into the, you know, the program, and, you know, pick their cows at that stage. And then they'll also order the sex semen straws, some of them as early as December, and have them in the pot for January. And then I suppose that lifetime report is looked back on when the first milk recording is done again in February/March, and seeing if there's any changes, any cows that fell out, you know, had a problem this spring with mastitis or something like that. So that would be the first one. The next report we would be looking at would be the EBI report. And I suppose pulling from that, you know, what parameters, you know, particularly in the lines of the fat and the protein percentage, they want to breed the best off the best. So they're looking back all the time on the data that they've built up. Plus, as I mentioned there, the little white book from ICBF with all the data is used as well. The other thing that would be done as well would be weighing of the heifers. Some farmers weren't happy, they went in off grass rather early, October, November last year. So they'd weigh the heifers as well and see what target weight, are they on target weight, or, what has to be made up. So that would be done as well. And body condition scoring of the herd would be the other top tip I'd have.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Sandra. Look, some very good insights. Niall, I suppose you discussed sex semen, and I suppose it's an area that has been grown over the last number of years. And I suppose maybe would you discuss maybe what you're seeing in relation to sex semen, like how much of a growth are we seeing in that? And I know that you are investing maybe in sex semen in Dubai, so maybe you might just give us an overview of what's happening from a perspective in Dubai.
Yeah, no, it's grown every year. It really has grown every year by almost half from the year before, I'd say. And a lot of farmers are adopting it now. A lot, even on heifers. It started on heifers, and now it's moving towards cows. And yeah, it's great to see it. The benefit of it is to get a female from that good cow. That's the main objective of it, and to breed good, breed better replacements from those better cows. Yeah, so we have got a laboratory that they're currently building out here, where there's going to be tables coming in from ST Genetics, and they're going to be installed here in Dubai. And the bull stud is just right behind me here as well, so it just means that we'll be able to have more control. Well, yeah, we'll be able to sex for that bit longer, a bit more extra control, and we'll be, I suppose, a bit more reactive to indexes, things like that. We'll be able to get the bulls we want sexed that extra bit quicker.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear. Look, and I think it's important, that we're supporting that and investing into the future on sex semen. But maybe just one last question, Niall, that I might throw to you is around, we've spoken about sex semen and cow nutrition, but I suppose we haven't maybe spoken really about the rest of the herd. So we're breeding the cows with the sex semen and selecting the cows for replacing heifers. But maybe you might just touch on what the plan would be for the rest of the herd in relation to the breeding season.
Yeah, I suppose you're going to have to breed them anyway. It'll be breed choice first of all for the farmer. They're going to have maybe a range of different breeds, and the older cows might get some, heavier bulls or within the breed or something like that. Gestation length as well. Look, I think there's beef going in from day one now. That's the first thing. And see what breeds work well for you in the farm. As well as that, labor is another consideration. You don't want to be, if some farmers can afford to be up most of the night time, and other farmers can't. So it really depends on each farmer on that beef side of the house now. But yeah, seeing a lot of use of beef from the word go. At the same time, I still think it's important to mention that if you have older cows that maybe aren't as suitable to sex semen, I still think that they should be given the conventional straw to try and get that good heifer from them, if they're good.
Perfect, Niall. Thanks very much. Sandra, just really quickly, I know as part of the breeding farm walks that we're having, and Niall, you touched on the beef side of things, but the dairy beef index is important as part of the farm walks. Maybe really, really briefly, just for anybody maybe that's not familiar with dairy beef index, maybe you might just give a quick explanation on the dairy beef index.
Okay, so we're trying to encourage farmers that when they are looking at picking other straws, whether after the sex, after the conventional dairy, that they would look at the beef straws that they'd be picking. So the dairy beef index is similar to, I suppose, we compare to the EBI, the Economic Breeding Index. But like with the Economic Breeding Index, we don't say to farmers just pick on one trait, right? And the dairy beef index is no different. We would ask farmers, to have certain criteria, for example, over €100 when you're picking a DBI straw, but to look into that to, let's say, the other criteria that's within that straw. So I suppose like the muscle traits that would be in on the dairy beef, and to look for positive on those, because they can make a huge difference. And I suppose we all need to be working together in this industry. So if you're going to use a DBI straw, use one which will, as I suppose, consider for yourselves the gestation length and easy calving, right? They're probably the two most criteria from the dairy farmer's point of view. But also from the beef farmer that's going to potentially rear this animal, you know, from potentially 3 weeks of age, that it's something that's going to give them, you know, a higher level of profitability at the end. So it's a case of combining the two. So if in doubt, and people, you know, all these things are new, talk to the likes of Niall and talk to the likes of myself or the Teagasc advisors or the other breeding advisors that are out there. Because if you're unsure, the only way to clear that up is to talk to somebody in the profession about it. So that's what I would recommend as well, you know. Because if you have a stock bull on the farm, TJ, the one stock bull, if there's a trait that's not correct, it's like what we advocate, and Niall mentioned there, a team of bulls, you know, for your breeding your potential heifer replacements. We'd also encourage, when you're using the DBI, you would use a team of bulls as well. So get the advice if in doubt.
Good stuff. Look, thanks very much, Sandra and Niall. I think we could chat for a lot longer, but look, we're well over time at this stage. I just want to share a slide there, and I'm going to wrap up then as part of that. So sorry, you can see that there now, can you?
Yep.
Yeah.
So look, I suppose just in relation to, look, again, two really good presentations, and I suppose in relation to Tirlán, most of you listening here are familiar with the Sustainability Action Payment, and that's to support on-farm sustainability. That'll be opening up again for 2024, and I suppose many of the measures within the Sustainability Action Payment, I suppose, support, you know, I suppose breeding and improving breeding on farm. And I suppose some of those measures just that I've highlighted here is milk recording, which Sandra and Niall already mentioned, improving herd EBI, herd disease screening, and I suppose participating in the Beef 2020 Club. Sandra, you mentioned there around reaching out to picking bull teams, and you know, equally within our own, within Beef 2020, there's some, they'll be able to support you through that. The use of sex semen, and I suppose also there number 19 around genotyping, which is a new measure for 2024. So again, that'll be opening up soon, the portal to declare your actions, and I suppose as part of your breeding season, don't forget some of these measures are supported through the Sustainability Action Payment. Lastly, I'd like to just draw your attention to our next farm walk as part of the joint Teagasc Tirlán Future Farm Programme, and that's going to be a clover farm walk on Kevin Murphy's farm in Gorey in County Wexford. So that's Friday week, the 5th of April from 11 to 1 o'clock. So if anybody's in the area, please do drop in and have a look at the clover on this farm.
They'll be in there for another half an hour if you.
Oh, I'd be finished in like 10 minutes.
So I'd like to just wrap up then at the end of the webinar. You know, again, two really good presentations from Niall and Sandra, and thanks very much for those presentations. I'd like to thank the behind team there on IT who have helped us to deliver this webinar. And you know, I wish everybody a successful breeding season for 2024, and we'll chat to you all throughout the summer on the farm walks as part of the joint programme. So again, thank you very much everybody for joining, and we'll see you in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, CJ.
Thank you.